Dive into the pulse of Bills football with Turf to Tape, where veteran sideline reporters Sal Capaccio and film room guru Erik deliver a one-of-a-kind podcast experience, combining Sal's unparalleled access to players and coaches with Erik's razor-sharp film breakdowns. The show bridges the gap between casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. This is Turf to Tape.
This is Turf to Tape, presented by Thin Man Brewery. I'm your host, Erik Turner. As always, joined by my man, Sal Capaccio from WGR. Sal, what's going on, brother?
Not much. I literally just got back from watching the Bills have their Tuesday practice. And just as I got back, learning that CJ Stroud has been declared out for the game against the Buffalo Bills. Same thing with Petrie, their nickel corner. So this is just happening now as we're talking in real time here on Turf to Tape. Yeah.
No, that's a great update, Colin. Thank you for that, remark in our chat. And since we're on the subject,
I didn't see that either. Thank you very much. I didn't see it. Thank you, Colin. You got that as well. But Jalen Petrie, thank you. Yeah, thank you. You got it.
Well, you just got back from practice. I'm sure you got some quick updates from that, and guys that were practicing, guys that weren't practicing. So send it our way.
Yeah, for sure. So really, the injury report won't be much changed at all from yesterday. And Sean McDermott termed it another walkthrough day, basically, Erik, but it was a little bit more than a walkthrough from what we could recognize. And honestly, like, if it is a walkthrough, the media generally doesn't get to watch anyway. So they did a little bit more than that today, but he basically referred to it as that. So the guys that are out, good news that Khalil Shakir was back after a personal day yesterday. But Dalton Kincaid did not practice. Neither did Federi Mathis, excuse me, the two guys they missed last week. And then Curtis Samuel and McCole Hardman both did not practice. So we can leave a lot of the speculation on what that means for the wide receiver group with Keon Coleman's situation, with Gabe Davis, with Tyrell Shavers. Elijah Moore was inactive last week. I mean, there's some juggling that's going to be going on here. Everybody else from yesterday will be limited again today. We'll see exactly when it comes out. That should be the case. Shaq Thompson, a full participant, hamstring injury. I will say, though, he was a full last week. He didn't play. So I don't know if that means they backed off because there was a game in 4 days and didn't want to, hey, if you know how it works, you get him out there and he does something, he's gone for a whole game and a half.
The wide receivers that, were limited or didn't participate, that's going to be interesting, as you said, to, the wide receiver room, who dresses, who doesn't, who's active, who's not. But also that's going to affect the return game, which is something that, we'll kick the show off with that, because that's something we talked about a few weeks ago, that hidden yardage. In this game, it was huge. It was huge for the Bills offense, the special teams, the kick returns by Hardman, by Ray Davis. I mean, Hardman had a 61-yard return. Davis flipped the field several times for the Bills. How much did that return game kind of tilt the momentum in the offense's favor, in the Bills' favor at home?
Yeah, it was huge. It was massive. Now, listen, the thing about it is that really hurt is the Bills did not capitalize on a lot of these great field position starts, right? I did the math. They were starting like at their own 40-something or the plus territory of the Buccaneers, and still in three different drives this way, Erik, only came away with one field goal in those 3 drives total. Wow. But what it allowed them to do was at least flip the field position in those situations, right? Like, you want to score, no doubt about it. But man, massive uptick in field position, and especially from the kick return game. You start off right away with McCole Hardman. We were just down at the practice facilities. I said, this is the exact question I asked Sean McDermott. Like, what allowed you to be so much more successful in the return game? And, he mentioned right away McCole Hardman's speed and what he does and how much juice he can give you. And right away that happened, 61-yard return. But then he mentioned Ray Davis doing a great job, and really the blocking. The blocking was key. And because of the rules, the way they've changed, and then he talked about a little bit about personnel. You're never going to get Sean get into the weeds and details of the actual strategy. But this was a big change for the Bills. The average starting field position after kickoffs was around 41-yard line, I believe, if I remember right. That is a massive uptick for a team that was second worst in the league in overall.
Second worst. Yeah. It was, the speed of Hardman was big. Davis's ability to break tackles and elude tackles was big. But I will tip the cap to Tabes, because his coordination on those returns is, to me, what separated prior weeks than this week against the Bucs. It was interesting. Again, it's a little different this year. We're so used to seeing like 1 or 2 layers of a kick return unit. He had several layers, and it was almost like a zone blocking play where they kind of developed the blocking late and just used angles, like zone blocking angles, to open up these lanes and massive lanes for those returners, and those returners hit it more times than not at full speed. I thought that was huge, obviously, to kick off the game. But as, again, the momentum, the back and forth nature of this game happened, I think those moments captured back some of that momentum and while they maybe didn't capitalize on all of it, it gave the offense a little more confidence knowing that, hey, they're starting with better field position.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I remember going back to the owners' meetings when everything changed with the field position, the kickoffs and the dynamic kickoff, and how this all happened the last couple of years. And, last year was the first year of this, and this year they changed it to the 35. And, that was the real question, and that was the real talking point, which was, how will teams react? What will teams do? How will they strategize this new kickoff return? And the big notable theme that came out of it, Erik, was this is now a running play. You have to treat this running play like literally a handoff or a sweep. And a sweep where that's why you see running backs returning kickoffs now. And years past, you might not see that as much. You might see a wide receiver, and you still do that, Curtis Samuel, but you see running backs because it's guys who have to understand how to move in tight quarters and how to understand angles and blocks and have that vision.
Totally.
And that's something that teams are always tweaking with. So for sure, that was a very, very big deal for the Bills. By the way, it's even more than I thought. I said 41. After kickoffs, the Bills' average starting field position on 6 kickoffs, their own 44-yard line.
44. Yeah, that's amazing. Again, maybe they didn't capitalize on all of it, but I do think it mattered at home, with that crowd and everything, kind of jump-starting things for the offense. So let's talk about the offense. Your top-down thoughts on their performance, on the game plan, and we'll get into some of the details of the play of Josh Allen, some of his weapons, but the overall top-down thoughts on the Bills offense at home against the Bucs.
Well, I thought this was a game where when the answers weren't there in the run game, they were finally able to lean on the passing game, which they really haven't been able to do a lot of this year. And I'm not here to bash and criticize Keon Coleman. We can all do that enough for why he wasn't playing, right? We know why he wasn't. He has to be more mature. He has to be more professional. But I'm going to turn this into a Tyrell Shavers positive point and a Gabe Davis positive point, but especially Tyrell Shavers. When I say this, Erik, I think Tyrell Shavers gave them everything they were hoping Keon Coleman would give them when he played on the boundary. He did everything that Keon Coleman was kind of drafted to do.
Yeah.
And he's a 3-year veteran in this league. There's probably people who watch this game, and casual Bills fans, no, nothing wrong with that. Casual Bills fan watching the game going, who's the Shavers guy we just picked up? You didn't just pick him up. He's been here for 3 years. He's been working on the practice squad. He's been grinding. He understands all the nuances of this particular offense, and it showed. I thought my top-down biggest thought about this offense was this was the most comfortable and fluid and smooth I felt the passing game looked all season long. And I don't know if it's just a coincidence that it was Shavers and Davis in for Keon Coleman, but I think it is very notable that it was Shavers and Davis in and not Keon Coleman.
So then we'll start there. Shavers, 5 targets, 4 catches, 90 yards, 1 touchdown, 54% of the snaps, all career highs for him. He was in the right spots when he needed to be. He was an outlet for Josh, whether it was down the field or underneath. He did everything he's supposed to do. He did his 111th, not just on offense, but also in special teams. That's something that he's always done. It's really, kind of what got him, elevated. But with that said, with how Shavers played, with how Davis played, doing those little things on that Ty Johnson touchdown, you saw Shavers get from the backside of the formation, run down the field and seal off McCollum, the cornerback, to really spring Johnson for that touchdown. Doing all those little things with that effort, being in the right spots. How big is that kind of detail when you're talking unselfish work from those depth receivers like Davis and Tyrell Shavers? Even Curtis Samuel too. He had some good blocks too.
Would I be off by making this statement? You tell me. You watched enough of the Bills football the last many years. I think Gabe Davis might be the best scramble drill receiver Josh has ever played with.
I don't think you're wrong by saying that.
I think that's not Stephon Diggs. Maybe Cole Beasley. Maybe Cole Beasley was, he was really good at it, but Cole was a navigate at the top of the route and find a way to get open guy, right? It wasn't necessarily in scramble drill. Stephon Diggs was get to a spot, get open. He knows how to run routes and get open. I think Gabe Davis, what he's shown in Buffalo is he is, to me, somebody that this offense needed to have a guy understand what to do in those situations. Now, that said, Tyrell Shavers interesting enough, in the locker room, he said his rule on the long touchdown was not actually when Josh is scrambling to go deep. He has different rules. But what he saw, when he saw Josh look downfield and he took a peek to his left, he said, I'm going. And that's when he went. And it's so key to have guys who understand that about what to do in those situations. So you see when Tyrell Shavers and Gabe Davis are on the field and understand, hey, I got to be available for my quarterback in these certain ways, it makes such a big difference to the offense. And I remember Keon Coleman making a play like that, maybe in Detroit last year, whatever it was, but it's not his forte yet. It's not something he really is, he can be counted on to be able to do that. And it's no fault of his own. You know, I'm sure it takes a while to understand that with Josh and to understand how to play with him in those situations. And again, that's how I go back to Tyrell Shavers been here 3 years, dude. It's not like you just showed up. And Gabe Davis obviously played with Josh for 4 years and then he's back. But I think that is, I think that's very notable to think about why this offense moved the way it did in the passing game, and several of those plays, Josh Allen scrambles.
Right, and this is that scramble play, 2 Shavers for the touchdown. The outside receiver is Gabe Davis. He's running a curl route right near the numbers. Shavers is just running a flat route, so he's just going out to the boundary. But as you said, and Josh even admitted it, he probably had Gabe Davis underneath right here in this window, and you can see Shavers is covered up. But as Josh goes to scramble with this 3-man rush, you're going to see Shavers convert that down the field, and he doesn't like work towards the middle of the field. He stays near the boundary, knowing that Josh has the arm capabilities to make this throw, and then you see Josh step into that and throw it down the field for that touchdown. But like that was great. That was great playing outside of structure. But this play right here on the backside of Ty Johnson's touchdown, I want you to watch Shavers right here, backside right here, and watch as the play develops. And McCollum's 27. That's the guy that he's supposed to be blocking. And you see him run down the field and wall him off so that Ty Johnson can get into the end zone for the touchdown. That's the kind of play that the coaching staff is playing in the film room come Monday. And so it's those little details, it's those little plays that not only got him elevated to play in this game and in prior games, but it's going to be very difficult to take a guy like that off the field now from going on the rest of the season.
I agree. You and I both did a little coaching in our lives. And I remember I used to coach the wing T, right? The wing T was the offense we used to run. And we used to have a rule when we were watching film that we would tell the quarterbacks, if I don't see you literally carry out your fake all the way past where the film is, I should not see you in the film. You should literally carry out your fake all the way past. That's how I know that you're doing everything downfield that you can do to make sure you're helping this offense in this particular play. I want to go back to what you just said. That is something that will be highlighted and talked about and come back to when you talk to Keon Coleman and say, you see this is what we need. This is what we're looking for. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a critical type of conversation with Keon, but it has to be hey, this is how you learn. Look what this guy is doing on this particular play, right? So I think that you're right to bring that up. And what Tyrell Shavers did there, it's interesting. I looked, he had 16 special team snaps. So he was still playing on kickoff return. Does that change on Thursday night? Like, is he doing enough now for the coaching staff to say, we got to get this guy more involved in the offense and we can't put all that on him? I think that's really interesting. Sean talked about that yesterday. He was asked about it and he basically said, look, I know Taves doesn't want to lose him, right? But also Joe Brady wants to use him too. So that's going to have to be a balance now.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure that out eventually, especially if he becomes a larger role, a more prominent role, instead of just being that rotational type guy. So you said the offense and how different it looked. In your arrow up down column, you said it wasn't just the numbers of 317 yards, 9 different receivers catching passes. It was also the flow and look of the passing game that was much better for the Bills. Things seemed more in sync and available. So I want your opinion on this. Do you think it was Brady's scheme or calls in this game against the Bucs that made it look in sync or available? Or was it just that they let Allen be Allen, let him rip it, and really, in turn, that gives him more opportunities when we're talking that passing game?
I do think Joe Brady had a lot to do with it. But let's remember that late in the week, they had to change everything up, right? They had guys, Brady talked about this. He talked about that late in the week when you have Keon in his situation. Now guys who've been playing like Keon all week with the ones, suddenly they're not with the ones. And now you got to kind of change a little bit of your game plan, your philosophy. But here's why I'm going to give Joe Brady credit and say part of it was him and his scheme. There were 5 catches for close to 130 yards by the running backs. That's Joe Brady's scheme too, getting Ty Johnson out in space, getting James Cook out in space. We haven't seen that as much. The play you just showed a little while ago. So I think Joe Brady deserves credit here for the scheme and being able to not only find different ways to get the ball to different guys. How about adjusting after the first drive where they came with two unblocked blitzers, right? The Bucs. One of them results in the interception by Josh, the bad throw, then the push throw out, shovel pass. But they did a great job. By the end of the day, Erik, the Buccaneers had 0 sacks and one quarterback hurry that they were credited for.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. I do think obviously Brady gets a lot of that credit. For me, it was the fact that he committed on early downs, first and second down, to more passing, 55% passing rate on first and second downs.
Play action too, right?
Play action rate, 30%, over 30% on first down. Again, breaking those tendencies that we've talked about the last few weeks. On play action, Josh was 5 for 7 for 101 yards and 1 touchdown. So I think that goes to his credit. But if we're talking, the player of the game, obviously Josh Allen, probably the player of the week. For us, he is a tapped-in player of the game against the Bucs. 357 total yards, 6 touchdowns.
Oh my God!
In all, 2 interceptions. I'm going to rattle off some of these accolades because Colin Ritchie did some research for us, our producer. He's the first player in NFL history with multiple games of 3+ passing and 3+ rushing touchdowns. He surpassed Peyton Manning for the most total touchdowns by a player 30 or younger, 290, as a matter of fact, for Allen, and 288 for Manning. He also surpassed Tom Brady for most career games with 3+ passing and 1 rushing touchdown. And Josh has 11 to Brady's 10. And then finally, tying Cam Newton for the most rushing touchdowns by the QB all time. He was our tapped-in player of the game for a lot of those reasons. But my thing is, when we're talking the scheme versus just letting Allen rip it, for the last couple of weeks, it's gotten to that point where we're just like, we want to see the old Josh Allen. We want to unleash him, right? You want to weaponize him. And I think a lot of that credit goes to Brady, just saying, you know what, you guys are right. It's time to cut him loose. And given those opportunities, don't shorten the game by just handing it off to Cook, because Josh Allen is your most dangerous weapon. As good as your offensive line is, as good as James Cook is, and everyone that runs behind that O-line, Josh Allen is still the weapon, and they needed to bring back that fear on the defensive side of the ball with Josh Allen. I thought they did, and that's partly why I think he becomes that player of the game, because they let him do what he does, mistakes and all, chaos and all. It gave him more opportunities to rectify those mistakes. The margin for error wasn't as bad, and so I think that's why Josh, he lit it up, and he just put the team on his back and said, you know what, I got this.
I'm going to give you a stat, right, that coincides with what you're saying right now. So last year, 2024, Josh Allen, his number of rushing attempts in games for the first 10 games was, he topped out at 9 a couple times, but generally it was 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
In game number 11 last year against Kansas City, 12, and then twice more right after that had 2 multiple digit rushing attempt games, meaning 12, then 10, then 11. He had a 6, he had a 5. And again, maybe this is what you just are talking about, which is it's late in the year. It's critical. Now we have to have our quarterback be our quarterback because we got to make first downs. We got to score touchdowns. I mean, the designed runs at the goal line, I'm not talking about the push, not talking about the quarterback sneak. The other one, designed run, a couple of them.
Yeah.
I mean, these are just things we haven't seen a lot of this year, but we've seen in the past. But again, go back to last year. Look at Josh's rushing attempts last year once you got to week 11. Same time period. Once that happened, the rushing attempts went up.
Yep.
I just wonder if that's going to keep happening now that we're getting towards the end of the year.
I love that point, because those 2 design runs that he took him for touchdowns and really got the crowd into it, it really brought out the old Josh Allen when, him celebrating, him going just berserker in the end zone, getting the crowd going. But the funny thing is, on those 2 exact calls, those designed runs, they made it look like it's a pass run option where Josh could throw to the screen to the James Cook and kind of use that as eye candy, where Josh can actually read it and it's kind of like an option. But I'm told those were actual calls for Josh. There was no option to throw it. They made it look like that, but these were actual calls for Josh. And that tells me once again that they were committed. Joe Brady was committed to getting Josh going and making him that multi-dimensional threat that we've been waiting for all year. And so I think it's smart because, as you said, this time of the year, as the weather changes, as the playoff picture starts to take form, I think you need to start getting defenses to respect not just James Cook and the Bills offensive line, but the reigning MVP and Josh Allen.
100%. I think he's overall the best offensive player in the National Football League. I mean, he can do
Agreed.
so much, and he can help you in so many different ways. And when things start to break down, there's nothing wrong with a guy like, oh, he's got to put on the cape, he's got to do this. Like, it's so funny. We go through these ebbs and flows of, are they asking Josh to do too much versus why aren't they
Yes.
asking Josh to do more? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, every game is a little bit different. There's nothing wrong with your best player having to be your best player. It's a football game. It's competition. Do you think that I don't know, last year wasn't, let's give it to Saquon, Philly would say, right? Because yes, Jalen Hurts is great, but like, it's our best player. We're a great run team. Nobody's saying, are they asking him to do too much? Right? That doesn't happen. You do what you need to do to win the game. And right now, at least Sunday, that's what the Buffalo Bills needed. We'll see if that's what they need on Thursday night against a really, really terrific Houston Texans defense.
Yeah, that defense is fast. They're talented. They're up there in almost every statistical category. And, they're the type of defensive scheme that has given Josh issues. But I want to say, like, as good as Josh played, there's still meat on the bone. Like you said, that Tyrell Shavers touchdown, there was plays to be made underneath. There were plays on that interception, the first interception where he's backed up. Josh actually messed up on that play, setting the protection. He admitted that.
Yep.
He set up the protection wrong. He set up the offensive line essentially to fail.
Deion Dawkins he slid it right when he should have slid it left.
Yes. Yep. He told the O-line that he wanted to keep the left hot. And so you have Deion Dawkins getting out on the DN instead of squeezing inside on the linebacker. That was another screw up on the same play. And then finally, Josh screwed up again because he had Cook in the flats. He could have just got rid of it. So again, there's still meat on the bone. And as good as he played, there are some areas he could still, be better in. But overall, great game by him. Again, showing off his skill set that he still has it. He hasn't lost a step. He's focused. None of the offseason stuff has affected him. He's still, as you said, one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous player in the league. That's why he was our tapped-in player of the game presented by Thin Man Brewery. And if you haven't heard, Thin Man Brewery has introduced Mafia Light. Mafia Light hits different with just 3.5% ABV and only 80 calories per 12-ounce can. Drinks like water with notes of beer. It's the first craft Pilsner of its kind brewed and packaged here in Western New York, a true game changer for local beer lovers. Go ahead and get Thin Man Brewery products in Western New York, in and around Western New York, including Mafia Light. Again, awesome segment from them. We appreciate them joining us. We'll have some pretty cool events coming up with them in the next year or so. But with that said, I want to get back to the receivers real quick. You kind of touched upon Gabe Davis. Talk about the situations where Davis was actually targeted, because I feel like that is something important to talk about, because even with all the time that they haven't been together the last few years, Josh seemed to trust Gabe Davis in critical moments of this game.
Yeah, there was a play early in this game where, standing on the sideline, I see Josh. He rolls out to his right, and I just happen to see Gabe kind of in the middle of the field crossing a little bit. And Gabe, he dialed it down a minute. He just dialed it down.
Yeah.
And he sat. He just sat in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know you could say, well, go with him, come back, whatever. He sat in the zone. Josh knew exactly where he was. Josh looks, he throws him, he hits him with a pass. And it's kind of a bit of a more nondescript type of play, but it just gives you the really kind of view of him trusting him and understanding. Gabe knew exactly what to do, exactly where to be. Josh trusted to throw him the ball there. Early on in the game, second drive for the Bills after the interception, they start going, now you can't turn the ball over again, right? You got to try and score because you have to match, all of a sudden Tampa scores. 4th down and 4. Bills are kind of no man's land. What's the call? Slant to Gabe Davis.
Slant to Davis. That's crazy. I love it.
He threw a bullet, and Davis caught it. And by the way, good coverage on the play. And
Great
Davis
coverage.
caught it, right? Now, I'll say later on, Gabe didn't come up with one that was a bullet on a slant in the end zone.
Yeah.
And you'd like him to do that. Josh said he probably threw it a little bit too hard. I've seen that happen before where Josh can throw a little too hard.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the overall point. If I told you going into the game, Erik, that Gabe Davis was going to catch 3 passes for 40 yards, I think you'd say, oh yeah, that'd be fine. Like that, give me that from Gabe Davis, because those three catches for 40 yards are more than what I might be getting from my other number 3 receiver or 4 receiver right now.
I loved some of his routes. Even when he wasn't targeted, he was creating rubs, for other wide receivers
Mhm.
in some of these route concepts. But I also started seeing, and something I've talked about in the film room a bunch, a little of those option route concepts kind of coming back. And we saw that in this game between him and Shakir. The play where Shakir was missed in the far sideline by Josh, that was an old school play that they used to run with Dable a bunch. And so I'm excited to see if they can kind of expand upon the playbook because of Davis's experience with Josh and this offense and rapport. But yeah, he went to Gabe in several high leverage situations, most of which he capitalized. One, again, he'd like to have back, but it was good to see him play 41% of those snaps and again, get back to that rapport with Josh. But if we're talking about offense real quick, I want to touch about Ty Johnson because you said James Cook was involved. Ty Johnson was involved. Everyone saw that touchdown by Ty Johnson, long touchdown there. But I want to give him props as that third down back in pass protection because pound for pound, he was one of the better players on the field in those high leverage situations. Two really big third down plays where he stayed in for protection and he had to scan 1 to 2 guys. He picked him up and Josh was able to convert it. But if I was going to do arrow up or down on offense, I would definitely give an arrow up to Ty Johnson.
And I gave him one for sure. He definitely deserved it. And it was because of him and James Cook being involved in the passing game. To me, that was why. But you're right. I think the overall all-around game, it's something we've been waiting to see. And why hasn't it been being used, right? Didn't Josh last year call him the best third down back in football?
Yeah.
And they really haven't been using him like you normally would see him used on third down. Yeah, he had a fortunate bounce go his way early on. He put the football on the ground. The ball came back to him, but that was after a nice job to get loose a little bit there, the same play. But you need to see more of that. If these teams are going to want to bring pressure on Josh and the Bills, and it seems to have been something they've been dealing with a little bit more of this year.
Mm-hmm.
I know these tunnel screens, people don't love to see them. And, sometimes they're not, they didn't work this week necessarily to Khalil Shakir, but getting the ball onto the perimeter to the running backs like Josh did to Ty Johnson and then out of the backfield, obviously, James Cook is a way to try to combat that a little bit because you're going to get a matchup. You're going to get a one-on-one out there. And all it takes is one block to spring it, if not.
All right. So let's flip the script. Let's go with the defensive side of the ball. We're going to start with the rushing defense. It's been a problem all year. 13 rushing first downs in this game, 4 explosive plays, 5.2 yards per attempt, over 200 yards rushing for the Bucs. It's the same run defense we've seen all year. Some of the same issues, whether it's tackling, misfits, some of the eye candy, catching the eyes of that second level. Is this a scheme problem, a personnel problem? And more importantly, do they have a pivot for this staff? Do they have a pivot so that they can stabilize and take it from one of the worst to even just average? That would make such a difference if they could just get it to average and stabilize that defense.
I'm not really sure. I think one thing that they have to do better as a team is just tackle better, right? I mean, we've said this all year, Erik. Like tackling, missed tackles right at the line of scrimmage have become an issue. Because the Bills are a bit of a lighter type of team generally on defense overall. I know there's some heavier guys. That's causing the linebackers to have guys on them a little bit more. And that's a lighter linebacker group. These linebackers, they have to be able to flow sideline to sideline. Yes, they can come downhill, but their best traits are their athleticism when they can get into gaps and they can diagnose plays and get to a spot before the blocker or the ball carrier, is even getting there. I do think the injuries have mattered, of course, especially to Terrell Bernard. That being said, I think Terrell played actually a better game last week.
Probably his best game this year.
I gave an arrow up to Terrell Bernard. I had a commenter say, how could you give the middle linebacker an arrow up when you get 200 yards run on you? So, well, because it's not always on the linebacker. Terrell Bernard led the team with 11 tackles. He had 2 for loss. He had 2 pass defense. And you know what? That's a great sign, the 2 pass breakups, because that means he's moving better to be in position to be near the ball and passing plays too. I thought this was one of his better games, maybe his best.
Agreed.
Let's hope that it carries on because he's still dealing with the ankle injury. Even at halftime, Erik, I come out at halftime and I go right to the sidelines. Terrell's on the medical bench before the second half starts getting his ankle checked out. And I'm like, man, it's just something he's dealing with all the time. And I think, it's just to make sure everything's stable before he goes out there and does what he has to do. Until you get him completely 100% healthy, I think we're going to have this question, but maybe a good sign on Sunday that he's getting a little bit more there. We'll see. Same thing. Matt Milano made a couple of really nice plays down the line of scrimmage. You highlighted one earlier.
Yeah.
When you tweeted it out. But again, he's the type of guy that he has to be kind of kept clean a little bit here because Matt's best strength, especially at this point of his career, is diagnosing and getting there, right? He's thinking, he processes so quickly. If he has to be in space and getting blocked by a lineman, that's not a good situation for the Bills. What's a good situation is that Matt Milano knows where to be, can get there and be able to make the play once he gets there.
It's funny whether it's Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, guys that have been injured, in and out of the lineup. And I think we are seeing not just that they're physically hampered, and all three of those guys are playing hurt right now. They're not injured, they're playing hurt, and they're having to constantly deal with these injuries and play through these injuries. And I think that is a huge reason why we're seeing multiple type 200-yard games from this defense. We'd see like one or two a year, but I feel like, a lot of the issues that are happening when it comes to run defense, it involves, several of those guys. And listen, I want to start with Taron Johnson because I think that he's probably the most rusty out of those three guys that have been in and out of the lineup. You're not seeing those splash plays, those fire your gun moments from Taron against the run, shooting into the C gap from out wide. He's not sticking to his keys. There are after plays, you can see like when a big play happens, especially in this Bucs game, they're looking to him like he didn't communicate something properly to Terrell Bernard on that deep crossing route. And so you're seeing things and problems that Taron Johnson usually doesn't have, but this year we're seeing it more. And people want to just point to his age and the abuse he's taken. There's some probably truth to that, but I think it's also just straight rustiness. These three guys who make up that second level are rusty and they haven't played together. And so with that said, we're talking Milano, Bernard, and
can I throw this in there too? There was a play in this game, man. I can't remember if it was a third down or a fourth down. It was a huge stop. Oh, it was the interception. It was Cole Bishop's interception. Erik, I mean, this was a straight up double team, I think, on Igbuka. It was a straight up double team on Igbuka. I think it was. And I talked to a couple of guys in the locker room, and I didn't get quite clarity on it because I don't know if they wanted to say exactly. But before the play, I don't know if it was Terrell Bernard or Taron Johnson. One of them did a little hand signal that like kind of was notable. And you can always talk about double teaming in the NFL, like double team a guy. Like generally that's bracketing, right? Like bracketing. You have a guy and you have someone bracketing and shading. I'm telling you, this was a double team. Like they double teamed Igbuka, and that's why Cole Bishop was able to get there and make that play.
Bernard, right before the play happened, he audibled. He audibled into that coverage, and him and Dorian Williams rushed the A gaps, and they popped out Rousseau and Epinesa to cover the four strong because they had a trips formation, then a running back to that side. There's four strong. So that definitely was Bernard playing from the shoulders up on that play. And that's really what, led to that touchdown. A great moment. But if we're talking that second level real quick, of those three guys, do you think that maybe their injuries or their on the field play has given the staff a reason to pull any one of those guys out? Say a Cam Lewis for Taron Johnson, say a Dorian Williams who had a phenomenal game in for Milano. Or do you think that happens anytime soon?
But to me, no, I don't, because I think that you're still better with Taron Johnson on the field. And even if you thought that Cam Lewis, which is a fine thought, I don't think there's anything wrong with this. If you thought that Cam Lewis just giving you a little bit more, I don't think it's worthy enough more to take Cam Lewis and make him the nickel, because what do you do with Taron then? He's not going to help you as a dime safety in a safety role. Like Taron is your nickel partly because Cam is so good at those other things he can do during the game. Right. Yeah. And like, you're just a better defense like that. So I don't think that. And then the same thing with Dorian. Dorian was very good. Dorian's very good in this specific role. And yes, he led the team in tackles last year as a will linebacker, and he's getting better, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I like using Dorian in this extra role as a spy, as a pass rusher, to do all those things with him, instead of saying you're just the straight up will linebacker for first, second, and third down. Shaq Thompson has probably arguably been their most consistent linebacker this year, actually. I think, to me, that's more of Terrell Bernard's injury impacting him. I don't think I would go right to, Shaq Thompson should be playing all over Terrell Bernard. But if Terrell Bernard is continually bothered, then I think you have to decide that on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, that's fair. And Dorian Williams, we talked about it. How are they going to overcome the injury to Hoyt? Some of that was Javon Solomon, but we also said Dorian Williams can do a lot of those things as well. A different type skill set than, say, a DN like Javon Solomon. But I loved how, Baker was breaking the pocket a few times. He broke contain a few times and extended some drives and got first downs. in the first half. So what did the Bills do? They went to that 3-man rush with Dorians as a spy, sometimes acting as a fourth rusher. And he was impactful. He was batting down passes. He was spying Baker, keeping him in the pocket, making him throw from the pocket. And on top of that, his special teams on kick returns, go back and watch those big returns. Dorian Williams was at the point of attack, blocking his ass off so that those running backs and returners could get into the open field. Just an awesome game from Dorian Williams. If you guys haven't seen that film, I put a reel of his special teams reps and his defensive reps on the Cover One account. But I thought it was a great game by him. I love his specialty. And like you said, that role and Cam Lewis is the same way. I do think the Bills are going to be playing dime. So I think Taryn and Cam are going to get plenty of reps on that defense. They're going to be playing a lot of dime as we move forward. But with that said, before we wrap this up, let us know any other updates from practice, any other updates as far as content the rest of the week and your schedule the rest of the week leading into this Thursday night game.
Well, listen, folks, if you're watching now, all right, it might be too late by the time you listen to it, but just a few hours from now, I'm going to be live at Batavia Downs Gaming and Casino and Hotel with Matt Bove for our Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast. Come on out. We'll have some giveaways. Cool. We're going to talk about what happened at practice today, leading into the game on Thursday night. Travel day to Houston tomorrow. Last warm weather game, dome game for the year, I believe. From what I'm hearing, Erik, it will be a closed dome. But there is always a chance that it's open, but I believe it's going to be closed. They generally have it closed. Sometimes you have it open for night games. Chance of rain, I think it's pretty surely going to be closed. But either way, the point is, after that, it's all colder weather outdoor games in the East for the rest of the year. And, it's a chance for the Bills, offense in a controlled environment to see what they can do with Josh Allen and no wind or anything like that. So, we'll see about that. And then from practice today, the team, because of this, I believe, that's why the team practiced indoors today. It's a nice day in Orchard Park, actually, but the team practiced indoors today inside the field house. We'll get an official injury update tomorrow. Sean McDermott I will have his weekly radio interview tomorrow on WGR. Okay. That's when he will have who is officially out of the game for anyone he's declaring out. So make sure you're listening to the Extra Point Show tomorrow to get that.
So your travel day is also tomorrow. So after that show you're going.
I'm not hosting. What I'm going to do is Zach Jones is hosting, but I'm going to do the interview with McDermott. And then after that, get to the airport.
Now, real quick, do you have a barbecue spot that you go to every time you go? Or you have to look into that still? We still look into
every trip is different depending where the hotel is, where we're staying. Sure. Actually, like last time we were there, we went to a great Mexican spot. Ooh, so, could do that again. Yeah. Really cool. I think you'll appreciate this. When I was teaching and coaching in Florida, I had a principal who's a little bit older, principal who's retired now, but his son, who I became friends with at the school, lives in Houston. And the principal who I worked for is out there visiting. So they said, hey, we'd love to see you. I told him where I'm staying. So I think I'm going to see my old principal and his son.
That's so cool.
Out for a drink or whatever at the hotel. They might come by. That'll be cool.
Awesome. Well, safe travels. Great work this week. You're really having to grind this week with the short week and all. But we appreciate your hard work. We appreciate everyone joining us. Make sure to follow us on both YouTube channels, on social media, obviously all podcast platforms as well. Turf to Tape can be found everywhere where you listen to your podcast. On behalf of Turf to Tape, presented by Thin Man Brewery, I'm your host, Erik Turner. That's Al Capaccio. We'll see you next week.